Half emperor, half deity, he is said to have ruled over China long before written history, inventing irrigation, agriculture, the axe, the hoe, the plow, acupuncture, and traditional Chinese medicine in the process. He is often depicted draped in a garment of leaves, and often chewing on their stems to experiment with their effects on the human body. Shen Nung was essentially the first pharmacologist. In compiling the classic of herbal medicine, Shen Nung discovered the medicinal properties of cannabis, saying it was good for gout, rheumatism, malaria, absent-mindedness, as well as about 100 other things.
People have been smoking for that long. What's the history of 420?
It's not quite as historic, bro.
The phrase, known around the globe, started here at San Rafael High in 1971, with these now decidedly grown up former stoners. They gathered today on this 420 to explain the story to KPIX5.
It was a joke back in the early 70s for us, and we still think it's a joke.
Somebody had a map to what they thought was a pot grove, so for weeks they went looking for it. They'd meet at 4:20 in the afternoon at the Louis Pasteur statue on campus. And 420 became their code for marijuana. They needed code, especially Jeff Noel. His father was a state narcotics officer.
Of course, he was aware, and he was always concerned what we were up to, and he had his inklings, he knew, but that's why code was so important.
The code spread. It helped that the group had ties to the Grateful Dead, also Maronites, and the rock band helped popularize it. It was cemented when High Times magazine documented their story in the late 90s.
And we were calling each other, laughing about the different 420s that people were coming up with, so we just kind of wanted to set the record straight as to how we knew it started.
Yes, they still occasionally smoke pot, and no, they've never capitalized on it. But they look at what it's become and they can't believe it. And it's almost impossible for them to comprehend that it all started with their unsuccessful treasure hunt 44 years ago. In San Rafael, Mike Sugarman, KPIX5.
The groups call themselves the Waldos because they hung out getting high near a high school wall so many years ago. They have also never lost touch.
That was a bit disappointing. Are you going to turn weed into a conspiracy?
Come on, bro. The government and corporations have been lying about weed forever.
Henry Ford's first Model T was built to run on hemp gasoline, and the car itself was constructed from hemp. On his large estate, Ford was photographed among his hemp fields. The car, grown from the soil, had hemp plastic panels whose impact strength was 10 times stronger than steel. Henry Ford ran 40,000 vehicles on hemp fuel from only 10,000 acres. The emissions are what you exhale, and the next year's crop reconverts it back into oxygen. That's a natural cycle fuel. Way back in the 1930s, Henry Ford was hard at work in the alternative fuel sector, and in 1941, he constructed a hemp-fueled and hemp-bodied prototype car. The plastic body panels were composed of 70% cellulose fibers, including industrial strength, mixed with a resin binder, and apparently they were pretty sturdy. A guy beats on the trunk with an axe and it fails to leave a mark. Industrial hemp won't make you high. It has no THC in it, but its association with marijuana has historically been a major legal stumbling block. There's some of you that think I'm full of shit, but the actual footage of 1941 should be proof enough for you.
Amongst the thousands of products made from hemp, one of the most extraordinary is Henry Ford's plastic car. Built in 1941, it contained cellulose fibers derived from hemp, sisal, and wheat straw. The plastic was lighter than steel, yet could withstand 10 times the impact without denting.
Why would they not use it then?
Because all their money was invested in other industries, bro.
But look at this. That is hemp. So he's banging his hammer against this fucking car, and it's not even making a dent.
So tell me why they didn't build the car out of hemp then?
Because of William Randolph Hearst, that fucking William Randolph Hearst was the guy who owned Hearst Publications. He also owned a bunch of paper mills.
Yeah.
And he's the guy who demonized hemp. This has to do with a lot of things, but a big part of it was William Randolph Hearst, because they're at a cover of Popular Science magazine. It was like hemp, the new billion-dollar crop. And they made that because there was a device that was invented called the decorticator. And what a decorticator was, it was a machine that allowed you to effectively process the hemp fiber without the use of slavery. See, for years and years, they had used slavery to process hemp, and hemp was what they used for canvas. That's why the name canvas comes from the word cannabis.
Yeah.
That's literally La Mona
They
Lisa.
wrote the Declaration of Independence on hemp.
So the first drafts, on hemp paper. It's a far superior paper than wood pulp paper. Well, when they had come out with this article in Popular Science magazine, Hemp, the New Billion-Dollar Crop, they were essentially saying that hemp, because of the decorticator, now hemp would replace wood for paper, for all these other things.
So we don't need to destroy the forests anymore.
William Randolph Hearst not only owned these newspapers, but he also owned these paper mills, and he owned these forests. And he decided to combat this competing industry with propaganda. So they started printing these stories about how these black people and Mexicans were taking this wild drug, right?
The white women.
Exactly. And then everybody was like, Jesus. So when Congress first made marijuana, first of all, marijuana was not even the word for cannabis. Marijuana was a word for a wild Mexican tobacco that had nothing to do with it.
But it's Mexican.
Exactly. Careful. Yeah. Danger, across the border. The brown ones. And so people responded to this, and when they made it illegal, they didn't even understand that they were making cannabis. They didn't understand they were making the commodity hemp illegal.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, bro. It was Nixon.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
In 1970, President Nixon signed the Controlled Substances Act. The act divided a list of drugs into 5 categories, or schedules, based on their potential for abuse and medicinal value. Drugs in Schedule 1 were made illegal for all purposes.
Category 1 is the most dangerous drugs, and that's where marijuana is, like right next to it.
To justify this decision, President Nixon hired a group of doctors and legal experts known as the Schaefer Commission to study the dangers of marijuana. But when they found that marijuana was not as detrimental to health as assumed, Nixon ignored their report. Instead, he placed marijuana at the forefront of a war on drugs that would last decades.
The enforcement of these laws have absolutely disproportionately impacted communities of color and continue to do so to this day.
The federal government was uncompromising when it came to marijuana criminalization. But states? Well, states were more like Peter Tosh. They saw things differently.
In the wake of the Schaefer report, which said marijuana is not really dangerous, a number of states, led by Oregon, decriminalized marijuana, which means if somebody's caught with marijuana or using small amounts of marijuana, they would have gotten a traffic ticket kind of thing, like a civil infraction.
Crazy they put weed in that category.
They did it so they could get slave labor from prisoners, bro.
More deadly even than these soul-destroying drugs is the menace of marijuana.
At the start of the 20th century, most of what we think of as illegal drugs today were actually legal in the United States. Marijuana was sold in drugstores, and doctors even recommended it as medical treatment. But during the 1930s, anti-marijuana campaigns were launched across newspapers and other media, portraying cannabis smokers as addicts, and monsters. Most notably was a propaganda film, Reefer Madness, released in 1936.
You know, I remember seeing that movie a long time ago, and I think it certainly speaks to the fact that people were not really familiar with marijuana.
The Federal Bureau of Narcotics was created in 1930 with Harry Anslinger, an infamous prohibitionist, as its commissioner.
Treasury Department intends to pursue a relentless warfare against the despicable, dope-peddling vulture who preys on the weakness of his fellow man.
That guy looks fucking miserable.
That's what you were like when you stopped smoking for 3 years, bro.
I wasn't that bad.
It was a long 3 years, bro.
It's good to have a break from time to time.
You only quit because your ex made you, bro.
Hi everyone. My name's Sackhead. Hi. I'm here today because I'm addicted to weed.
Hell no! You in here for some marijuana?
Yeah.
Marijuana? Man, this is some bullshit!
Told you, bro.
Marijuana is not a drug. I used to suck for coke.
I seen him!
Fuck it now, man. Now that's an addiction, man. You ever suck some marijuana? Huh?
No. I don't think anyone ever has.
I didn't think so.
Who's this man?
Told you it was a bad idea, bro.
Anslinger strategically used anti-marijuana propaganda to capitalize on economic tension between immigrant communities and the white population at the height of the Great Depression.
And yeah, as you know, during that era, it was a lot of Hispanic people used it more than others, so they were definitely interested in pounding it into them.
The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 officially made cannabis illegal in the United States. The first people imprisoned under the law were arrested in Denver, Colorado, a day after the law went into effect. 75 years later, Colorado legalized marijuana for recreational purposes.
You look around Denver, and this is not a hotbed of crime or insanity, and I assure you, lots of people are smoking marijuana a lot. It's not this nightmare scenario. Overall, it's pretty cool.
I think weed should be legal everywhere. I don't think it's good for everyone.
We're literally wired for cannabis, bro.
Cannabinoid receptors, named after cannabis, are found on nearly every organ in the body. They bind with our own cannabis-like molecules, called endocannabinoids, which regulate functions like sleep, cognition, memory, and mood. Unlike other brain chemicals, they travel backwards across the synapse, where they control the release of most neurotransmitters.
One of the most amazing things that happened was the discovery of the endocannabinoid system. Every mammal has one, and this is a system of chemicals and receptors throughout the brain and body. And really, the primary goal of the endocannabinoid system is homeostasis, keeping things in balance.
The discovery launched a new chapter in neuroscience.
Cannabis opened the window into the functioning of our body. Completely unexpected window, because what was discovered was that THC binds to receptors in the brain and outside the brain. And when it does so, when it binds to these receptors, the cells now behave differently.
A key role of the endocannabinoid system is to manage stress. In fact, the first endocannabinoid found in our body was given a Sanskrit name, anandamide, meaning bliss.
It affects everyone differently. For me, it clears the noise in my mind and allows me to focus. Just clears all distractions.
Not me, bro. Makes me not want to do anything.
Well, yeah, everyone's brain's different. The problem is with it being illegal is you can't get what's right for you. Just get whatever the guy's got.
300 years ago, the cannabis plant was hailed as key to Britannia's rule of the waves. Fiber from hemp, a native variety of cannabis, became so essential to sailcloth and rope making that Henry VIII originally decreed it must be grown across England, laying the foundation for the British Empire. Pipes excavated from William Shakespeare's home show the bard may have smoked a noted weed, and later even Queen Victoria would take to pot to ease her menstrual cramps. Yet in 1928, the British Empire forgot her long love affair with cannabis and acted with the League of Nations in outlawing the drug. Recently, inroads were made by pharmaceutical company GW, which was granted permission to grow cannabis and produce their marijuana-derived product Sativex by the British government. But today, the drug is only available to multiple sclerosis sufferers and can cost patients in England up to $7,000 for a year's supply, leaving the vast majority of medical marijuana users to fend for themselves.
It's not fair, bro.
It's sad that it's got such a bad stigma in this country.
In the United States, pot's newly accepted benefits have set off a green rush of entrepreneurial energy and opened horizons of scientific inquiry. But in the UK, the government still considers weed to have no medicinal benefits, leaving the country in the dark ages of medical pot. Yet an estimated 500,000 people in England
buoyed by marijuana's emergence across the pond, aren't sitting idly by waiting for the government to allow it. They're taking matters into their own hands and defying the law. I want to know who makes this stuff in quantity, so I've come to a public housing neighborhood in London, and I'm about to meet a guy named Hydro. He's an underground weed concentrates maker who treated his own cancer with medical marijuana and now supplies John's neediest clients with serious, high-potency cannabis oil.
Always have one of these.
That looks sketchy as fuck.
He's a hero, bro.
It is medically legal here. It's just got such a bad stigma that no one wants to try it, and most people don't even know. Yo, what's good?
Well, did you get my message?
Who the fuck's this?
This is Samson, smarty pants.
The gaff was already a shithole, you prick. Come round there again, I'll stick that crossbar up your fucking ass.
Shut up, bitch!
Mug.
Who was that, bro?
It was Samson. You seen the 420 merch drop. It's gonna get a bit sticky, you know.
Fuck Samson, bro. Wait till next year when he sees the Terror Terribles. But for now, check this out. We made the ashtray, bro.
We worked with a 3D designer to get the master done for the mold. We had 3D versions of our logo made and 3D printed to be set inside the ashtray. We made the molds ourselves. Didn't get enough silicone at first, we had to ram a load of random shit in there to bring the liquid level up. Each one has some little imperfections, but overall, they came out pretty dope.
It's available for pre-order now and start shipping in 3 weeks, bro. Look at that packaging, bro. It's resealable. You can put your weed in there.
We're super proud of these, and we made them for you guys. We really hope you enjoy them.
I shall do my utmost.
New York's marijuana legislation started with the best of intentions, but things quickly went haywire because the state wanted to tightly control who got a license to operate. The bill didn't just legalize weed, it allowed smoking everywhere and attempted to rectify all manner of historic injustices by giving preferential treatment to those disproportionately harmed by prohibition. How about just making it easy and legal for people to go around the corner and buy a joint? The New York law set aside 40% of the tax revenue generated from weed to go toward the communities where cops had made the highest proportion of marijuana arrests. But the right way to fix past harms caused by the government is to expunge the records of the individuals who were wrong and make sure the government never does that kind of thing to anyone else ever again.
Being able to just smoke everywhere is a bit much.
It's because federal law applies to public housing, bro.
Cassandra Frederick is the president of the Drug Policy Alliance, which lobbied New York to pass the pot bill. So why is it that you can't smoke in NYCHA buildings?
As a federal regulation. In public housing, you're not supposed to use drugs. And also in 2018, the Obama administration passed guidance that is really encouraging folks in public housing to stop smoking cigarettes. And that for us was like, whoa, if they don't want you to smoke cigarettes and multiple infractions can lead to your eviction from public housing, when we legalize cannabis, they're going to be at risk, right? And so one of the things that we pushed was to make sure that people who lived in public housing had the opportunity to also partake in cannabis being legal.
Seems like a shit show.
It is, bro. It's overtaxed and still not federally legal.
And I don't think more than 5 or 10% of the cannabis consumers in New York shop at a legal store. And if I were to say 10%, that would be very generous, and I think most people would disagree with me.
Wow, so even post-legalization, you think 90% of weed consumers in New York are buying illegal products?
At least. I think that's a ambitious estimate to say that we've taken 10% of the market share in legal shops. The illicit stores don't have the compliance burdens, they don't have the tax burdens, and data in other states shows that when you get above 15 or 20% more cost, consumers are not going to do that. They're not going to say, oh, I want to shop legal to support legal, it's, safe and regulated products.
It's almost like when crafting the legislation, New York's esteemed lawmakers and our ex-governor didn't really care about weed smokers. And they certainly didn't pay much attention to how the weed business operates in the wild, or to the mistakes made by other states that had already legalized recreational pot. Back in New York, The sales tax on weed is about 46% higher than on everything else. Why should we pay higher taxes for weed than on caviar or Wagyu beef?
46% higher tax, what the fuck?
Yeah, bro. They want the whole market to be controlled by corporations.
At the stroke of midnight on New Year's, California will become the 8th state to legalize recreational marijuana. But questions remain about the new law and what it means for buyers and sellers.
New York has replicated a lot of California's foolishness. You have to admire the candor of one former cannabis regulator in the Golden State, who described the bureaucratic mindset toward the industry as a cash cow that needed to be milked. And indeed, licensing fees and taxes levied on the product were so high in California that hundreds of stores across the state are shutting down, with 15% of retailers and distributors now in default on their taxes. If they miss a single payment, California will levy a 50% penalty, which is like kicking your cow in the udder. In April 2024, California was owed $732 million in overdue pot-related taxes, and more than 70% of the proprietors in debt to the state have gone out of business. It's been a shit show, and the politicians are now reaping the predictable results of their folly.
So the end consumer is walking into a regulated store and seeing prices up here, and then they're walking into an unregulated store, or they're calling their guy and they're seeing prices down here.
Shout out all the guys out there holding it down.
The taxes weren't so high, you just go and buy it from a shop.
They want you to get it from the guy, bro. So the small shops go out of business.
Weed isn't even federally legal yet, but giant corporations are already ruining it for consumers, for workers, and for everyone, really. Trulieve, the largest cannabis company in America, controls over 50% of the legal cannabis market in some states. If you combine them with their two biggest competitors in Florida, for example, they sold enough weed in 2022 to give every Floridian 7 joints.
You are basically taking over the Southeast. Is there any type of goal there?
Yeah, that's it. So
You could be using their products without even knowing it. They create brands that evoke small brands and pair up with our most trustworthy celebrities, like Wiz Khalifa and whoever these guys are. Trulieve built an empire by exploiting policy mistakes in legalization, using their power to create those mistakes, and taking advantage of well-meaning programs. For example, the giant publicly traded corporation somehow got the only minority-owned license for a dispensary in Alabama. And they're already working to do the same tricks they did in states federally.
You have a lot of lobbyists in Washington right now, Kim.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do.
The Trulieve story shows us what we can learn about how a weed economy shouldn't be run, and how a good one could be run.
Heard of this company? They own a bunch of the UK medical brands.
Yeah, bro. They're taking over the global market.
In 2014, the Florida state legislature was building out a bill to legalize certain low THC strains of cannabis for medical uses.
The bill wasn't written by a progressive cannabis advocate like you might think,
but by Matt Gaetz, then a member of the Florida House of Representatives. Yeah, that guy. It was boosted by strong supporter Representative Halsey Beshears. Medical cannabis laws are complicated because they basically have to create an entire industry and how it runs from scratch. There need to be regulations on everything from labels to who can get licenses. During the debates on the bill, an amendment was added by Representative Matt Caldwell that said in order to get a license to grow the newly legal cannabis, a nursery must already have approval to grow 400,000 plants and have operated as a registered nursery in this state for at least 30 continuous years. 30 years. The amendment also added requirements for pre-existing real estate ownership and capital, requiring wannabe licensees to give the government $5 million in cash as assurance they could run the business. Who could possibly meet all of those qualifications? Well, there was Simpson Nurseries, the oldest nursery in Florida, opened in 1902. Simpson Nurseries was the family company of the Beshears. Yeah, that guy, the representative from earlier. To fully meet the qualifications, Simpson entered a partnership with Hackney Nurseries, also run by the Beshear family. The combined partnership got one of the just 5 licenses that Florida gave out after that bill. The combined company was Trulieve.
Fucking hell, how can they get away with that?
They want to wipe out everyone so they can sell their business to Amazon, bro.
In 2016, a Florida businessman, J.T. Burnett, was being investigated for a number of crimes, and undercover FBI agents recorded a conversation with him. He bragged to the FBI agents that he had, quote, worked through the bill with Bashirs, a childhood friend of his, over the course of one afternoon, and convinced him to push little tweaks to the bill. Those little tweaks were the amendment that broke the whole cannabis law, the one we just told you about. At the time, Burnett had a girlfriend, Kim Rivers. Today, they're married, and Rivers is the CEO of Trulieve.
You have a lot of lobbyists in Washington right now, Kim.
Yes, we do.
Burnett and Rivers don't come from backgrounds in cannabis, healthcare, criminal justice, or even retail, but rather finance, including Inkbridge LLC, a firm notorious for using government funding for private ventures. It's also invested in Trulieve. Burnett and Rivers were also involved in real estate and construction, and used their own companies to build Trulieve properties. Florida's first cannabis law and its largest cannabis business, Trulieve, were built on corrupt, pro-business, anti-worker, anti-consumer, anti-competitive practices by people with only their own interest in mind.
Fuck this company, and they own shitloads of weed brands.
One of them offered us a sponsor deal for this episode, bro.
Well, if you're watching, tell your bosses they can fuck off.
The lobbying for federal legalization currently is dominated by large cannabis companies and large alcohol and tobacco companies. And Amazon has endorsed federal legalization as well. What's really important to notice is that their job is easy because they want a corporate free-for-all. So all they have to ask for is legalization and nothing else. So when I served as a regulator, I was lobbied. Lobbying is something that anybody can do, but it tends to be the larger corporations that have the ability to really closely follow this regulation making process and then to come to the regulators with exact language.
Mount up.
Fuck's sake, come on, Ted. They're clearly setting up for an exit strategy with Amazon.
But back to Trulieve. They had a little problem. In other states, the licensing structure had also been perverted by people like them, meaning it was very hard for new businesses to move in. But they had something those other businesses didn't: capital and power. So they just started buying existing businesses and their licenses in other states. This strategy is deadly for small businesses because licenses are in such small supply. By 2021, they were operating in 5 states through a series of acquisitions and made their biggest purchase yet, Harvest Health, which gave them 6 more states. It also allows Trulieve to continue vertical integration. That's where they own every part of the process from production to retail. The very same thing that regulators in the 1930s knew would monopolize the alcohol industry. Trulieve's size also puts them in a position of power over their workers, who they've union busted multiple times, all while workers are dying in their facilities. 27-year-old Trulieve worker Lorna McMurray died from what the CDC ruled to be occupational asthma due to poor ventilation in the plant. Trulieve denied all responsibility and just went harder on union busting.
This is why it's illegal. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about your kids. They're just going to wait until Amazon's got their mitts around it, and then it'll become federally legal.
Germany have quite a good system, bro.
What is the current legal status of cannabis in Germany now that the laws have changed?
Okay. As Germans are, we do things in complicated and bureaucratic ways. So what we actually did is we legalized smoking weed. We legalized having up to
around 50 grams. And you can grow 3 plants at home per person. So when you're more person in a flat, then you can have more than 3 plants. And it's allowed to have cannabis in public, but not more than 25 grams.
But how do you get weed if you don't grow it yourself? And how do you get plants? And the idea that we have in our laws now is that you form a club, an association, a non-commercial one.
And you can be a member of a cannabis social club. And when you're a member of a cannabis social club, you are allowed to grow together cannabis, and you can get 50 grams per month from this club.
And that's the idea how we legalized it, to make sure that people who smoke weed and don't do any harm to anyone but themselves
can legally smoke weed and at the same time not have any incentive to make people grow and smoke weed for commercial reasons, and to protect the customers and especially like children from the possible harm by having a legal way, but a way that is regulated.
Because in states where you have a legalization of cannabis, you can see that the consuming people is decreasing when you're younger. And that was a big point for our Minister of Health in Germany, that we want to protect young people. You have more prevention. You're talking about consuming cannabis, so you know that's maybe not good for you when you're young. And because in Germany we have a lot of people consuming cannabis, like around 5 million people minimum, and they're consuming it, and it doesn't matter if it's illegal or legal. So we said, okay, we have to change something, because the cannabis they consume is from the illicit market. So it was for the health of the people, and we see that that when you forbid something, it doesn't matter for them, and then
Yeah, it's just the first step, actually. So you can be also both persecuted if you have too much of the cannabis. And I think if you compare it to alcohol or tobacco, it's crazy. Nobody they see, okay, you have 10 bottles of wine in your cellar. It's like you have to go to prison. There's no way of thinking is still, I think, the wrong way. Tobacco, alcohol on the one side, but in Germany, Oktoberfest, alcohol is like a cultural thing, and you should deal the same way you deal with tobacco, you should deal with cannabis.
It's true. In the Netherlands, weed's been decriminalised since 1976, and kids there generally don't smoke it.
They just need to legalise it everywhere, bro, before the corporations ruin it. They'll have to save that for next time.
Hold up, Joe, we've got to do the giveaway. But first, check this out.
We got a new piece with Worthy Enemies. We're high as fuck, bro.
Yeah, Worthy Enemies killed it again. We'll be looking like that in about 30 minutes.
Let's do this, bro.
Wait, fuck this guy. He says he's unsubscribing. On it again.
Ha, sucks to be you, bro.
Bang, bang!
Rap, rap.
Pick something from our merch store and we'll send it straight out.
Check out Timothy's mug, bro. It's full to the brim.
Yeah, that looks delicious. A big thanks to everyone buying the merch.
And our channel members, bro.
Almost forgot. Happy Easter. And as always, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.
Save some of that shit for me, bro.
I expected as much.
On the 21st of February, 2022, Venezuelan-born taxi driver and father of 3, Leonardo Coripe, was driving his motorcycle taxi through the streets of Lima, Peru, searching for customers and ferrying them across the city. At approximately 6 p.m., he parked his vehicle on Calle Las Peras in Los Olivos to chat with a group of other taxi drivers. Some witnesses reported that a heated argument erupted between Leonardo and one of the other men. After some back and forth, Leonardo walked over to the pavement, looking extremely distressed, and sat down.
To the very rocks themselves.
The man he had been arguing with then approached Leonardo with his phone and began filming him. In the now infamous footage, a defeated Leonardo solemnly looks up at the man and says, "Tu dile el
I
patron,"
shall do my utmost.
meaning, "You tell the boss." The cameraman then pulls out a 9mm Glock, replies, "El patron," as if to say, "Oh really?" and fires 5 shots at Leonardo's head. The first 3 shots struck him in his left temple, causing his eye to dislodge completely. The 4th and 5th rounds hit his nose and cheek, turning his face completely red. As he collapses onto the sidewalk, the camera lingers on his face. A gurgling sound and a bystander shouting can be heard near the end of the video. Many of the onlookers approach Leonardo's body to take photos and videos of their own thereafter. As would come to light, the killer was a known extortionist and sicario named Frank Lopez, otherwise known by his hitman alias, Mata por gusto, kill for pleasure. Leonardo owed him 60 soles in toll fees, around $16.50 US, and Frank decided to make an example out of him. Later that same day, Frank sent the video to other taxi drivers in the area as a warning. Pay your debts, or this could happen to you. The horrifying video soon began circulating on shock sites under the titles El Patron and One Man, 5 Bullets. It saw widespread circulation in Spanish-speaking countries and became a popular clip among school kids who shared it around as a sort of morbid rickroll. Frank himself was arrested 1 month later and was eventually sentenced to 17 years and 4 months in prison. That light sentence may boil your blood a little, but even more infuriating is the fact that he shouldn't have been a free man at the time of the incident. Frank had previously been arrested in 2019 for slaying 2 other people, and on top of that, was linked to the murder of 8 others, but he had been released on a technicality due to a mistake made by the judge. If that hadn't happened, then Leonardo would still be alive today, and one of the worst snuff videos in existence, filmed from the killer's own POV, would never have been created. 9 months after the incident, in November 2022, roughly 187 people were sent an email, simply titled, "Hello." The main body read, "My name is Leonardo Alexander Caripe Brito. This is what I look like on video." Attached was a file named California.mp4, which couldn't be previewed and had to be downloaded to view. When opened, a deep-baked video would play, one showing Leonardo's bloodied and distorted face, singing Katy Perry's California Girls. Anyone who replied to the email automatically received a response containing a screenshot from the video. Most recipients didn't see the funny side, and one was able to trace the Gmail account back to a man named Jacob. His IP address, email, and phone numbers were subsequently doxed. However, it was later revealed that Jacob hadn't created the deepfake and had instead been hired to send the emails on someone else's behalf. Another variation of the email, also titled "Hello," included the message, "My name is Leonardo. I exist," and featured a file named Leonardo.mp4. That video was a clip taken from the original El Patron footage and zoomed in on Leonardo's dead body. There was originally meant to be another entry that went here, but YouTube's deemed it too extreme. So if you'd like to watch the uncut version of this video, members can do so over on my Patreon. Buried in the darkest corners of YouTube is a channel that most people have never heard of. Allow me to introduce you to Ale Torres. The channel has no description, no bio, no real identity, other than this eerie profile picture of an anonymous figure. Very fitting for the type of content that the owner uploads. Browsing through, you'll find 753 unsettling videos, many of them filmed from the same vantage point, a single apartment window overlooking a neighboring building. At first glance, the footage looks boring, quiet, ordinary, but keep watching, and it starts to feel wrong. Every single video on this channel is voyeuristic in nature. The camera is typically fixated on the windows of the apartments across the street, or on the people on the pavement below. And it's not just one neighbor that the cameraman focuses on. He rotates between multiple residences, almost like he knows their schedules. That being said, he does seem to dedicate a worryingly large number of videos to filming a few of his neighbors in particular. He captures people in unguarded moments, doing their laundry, changing clothes, watching TV, dancing, biting, crying. Moments no one would ever knowingly let a stranger see. Other times, he makes his recordings at beaches, parks, bus stops, or while out and about. Some videos last just a few seconds, others go on for more than 20 minutes. There are no edits, no cuts, no added music or narration, just the eerie hum of city noise, distant conversations, and the unblinking gaze of Ale Torres' camera, capturing the intimate moments of oblivious strangers, stealing their privacy for his own amusement. I thought for a long time about what clips to include in this segment, because although I want to bring attention to Ale Torres and show just how inappropriate his actions are, a lot of his videos contain content that's really up close and personal. Therefore, I'm not going to include any clear shots of people's faces within the privacy of their own homes, but am showing just enough that these people might recognize themselves. That way, if they stumble upon this video, they can at least know that their fellow resident is watching and filming them. What's truly disturbing isn't just the content though, it's the reaction. The channel has barely any views, and though a few of his videos have taken off, most barely scrape 100. But the few people who do keep up with his content occasionally leave cryptic or approving comments, like a small, hidden community of watchers, feeding off someone else's life. I've even come across other users asking Ale Torres if he's going live again at any point, indicating that he streams and possibly sells similar voyeuristic content on other platforms. Doing a deeper dive into his content, I found this video, the first posted to his channel, which seems to hint that some of his videos were made in Miami, Florida, though car license plates and other videos indicate that he spends a lot of his time in Chile. Perhaps this channel was just set up to chronicle the owner's time living in the US, though whether his intentions were pure or not, this kind of behavior is obviously unacceptable. Personally though, I'm convinced that Ale Torres has creepier intentions. Whatever the case, 1 month ago, the channel suddenly went silent. No new videos, no updates, nothing. It was around that same time that this post surfaced on the r/mystery subreddit, left by user okdig5478. Found a weird YouTube channel that films people from a distance. Some of the videos are through people's windows, at beaches, bus stops, walking down the street, etc. There are literally hundreds of videos, some having hundreds of thousands of views. Couldn't find the channel mentioned elsewhere. Indeed, as far as I can tell, okdig was the first person to draw attention to the Ale Torres channel. Even though their Reddit post only received 1 reply and 7 upvotes, it's possible that this small amount of recognition caught Ale Torres off guard and made him worry about prying eyes. Ironic, given how he shows no such concern for the privacy of those he films. If that is the case, he'll really hate being mentioned in this video.
I must say,
then again, the guy behind the channel has shown his face in several videos that are still public, so if he is trying to protect his identity, he's not doing a great job. I swear while researching this video, I found uploads of him appearing alongside friends in his living room too, though those seem to have since vanished, perhaps at his friend's request. So where is Ale Torres now? Did he truly see the Reddit post and panic? Or did someone else catch him in the act and put a stop to his little hobby? After all, he has been known to make mistakes in a few of his uploads, with those he's spying on noticing his lens following them. At present, the channel is still up, with all of the videos still public, like a digital diary of stolen moments. And for all we know, it could start up again tomorrow. But whether or not he continues uploading his twisted little souvenirs, one thing is certain. Guys like Ale Torres don't just stop watching. One of the best parts about being a YouTuber is being able to set your own schedule. That flexibility lets me focus on the things that actually matter, like researching, editing, or just diving into a weird internet rabbit hole for a video. And because I like to do things on my own time, I use the sponsor of today's video, stamps.com. Stamps are essentially an online post office that take the hassle out of sending certified mail, invoices, checks, documents and packages, and lets me handle all of that whenever and wherever I want. You get access to the USPS and UPS services you need 24/7, literally from wherever you do business. All you need are a computer and a printer. They even throw in a free digital scale to get you started, and their rate advisor shows you the cheapest and fastest shipping options instantly. And along with convenience, that has to be my favorite thing about stamps: the huge discounts. We're talking up to 88% off USPS and UPS rates. Stamps.com connects with every major marketplace and shopping cart, so if you sell online, it's a no-brainer. So if you value your time and want more control over your workday, check out Stamps.com. Sign up at stamps.com/lazymasquerade for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to stamps.com/lazymasquerade.
In Torm's name, I shall serve.
Divorce in a conservative society like Japan comes with more than just legal hurdles. It carries a heavy social stigma, especially for women. On top of that, many are expected to leave their jobs after marriage and become full-time housewives, leaving them financially reliant on their husbands. As such, an unhappy marriage in the land of the rising sun can sometimes feel like a form of indentured servitude. That could explain the popularity of Dana Shine, in English, husband, die, a website heavily inspired by the anime Death Note, which needs no introduction, and the more obscure but equally compelling Hellgirl, a 2005 horror series in which people can have their tormentors dragged to hell through the services of a cursed website. As its name implies, Dana Shine is a forum where anonymous housewives gather to wish death upon their husbands, those who don't view till death us do part as a vow, but as an exit clause. Each post is a plea made by the writer to the god of death, asking for their partner's swift demise. Many users believe that by sharing their wish, they're actually manifesting it, willing it into existence. The site even features a monthly death count on the homepage, which tallies how many husbands have been successfully sent to the big sayonara. Reading through this twisted communal diary, you'll find thousands of personal stories from women who detail their grievances with their husbands. Their reasons range from serious offenses, like abuse and infidelity, to petty annoyances, like snoring or leaving trash on the floor. To give you a taste, here are a few recent posts which I translated. The reason you're late home from work is because you're having an affair. All you can tell are lies. You're a bastard, covered in debt. I get excited every time I hear the sound of an ambulance, but annoyingly, you make it home every night. Shinigami, please take him quickly. Die. Die, you bastard. Delete yourself. Oh wait, you can't get insurance? Then die instantly in a single vehicle accident. Die without causing anyone any trouble. Haven't you been alive too long? How many more years are you going to make me wait? You rat. Perish within a week at the latest. 38 years old, and a salary of 200,000 yen? Even our kids in elementary school understand that their dad's no good. They'd be happier if you were dead. Our son says, I'd never kill anyone, but I wish someone would kill my dad. Surely it's not worth living that much. Lol. Come on, get crushed by some heavy machinery at work today. Your disappearance will make your family happy. Your survival will only bring you trouble. I hope my husband, who has Asperger's syndrome, dies right now. You have ruined my life. Give me back my time. The only thing you can do to make amends, as you have neither the financial means nor a heart, is to expire and let me receive my survivor's pension. I married a poor, ugly guy who was inferior to me, but he got all cocky when I dressed him up in designer clothes, gave him stylish glasses, put him on a diet. And now that he's actually good enough to look at, he's gone out and gathered up some girls to hang out with. Die. After hearing all of those, you'd be forgiven for thinking that Dana Shine was just a space for these women to vent their anger, an outlet for those processing pain or betrayal. Indeed, many of the posts do deal with heavy subject matters, making it easy to sympathize with the writer. But in other cases, the users are simply motivated by the fantasy of escaping a boring or loveless marriage, with their innocent husband's sudden death, and subsequent insurance payout, imagined as the only way out. No matter how you look at it, death is the only option. First of all, divorce is out of the question for us. Think about how much we both earn. It's physically and financially impossible to separate. You can't come up with child support, a mortgage, living expenses. So although it may be fine for my mental stability, separation is out of the question. But if you were to die well and make a lot of money that goes to me, my life would be more stable, and I could protect our home and family. That is the only option. If you truly want to protect your family, as you say, I think there's no other way than this. I don't think you'll be of any use in your mid-50s, complaining about pains here and there. You'll only end up being a nuisance. Personally, I don't need you, and there's no reason for you to live in the future. If things go as I want them to, everything will be fine. I'll take care of both of your parents, so you can die in peace. Die well. Looking deeper into the site, you'll find a section entitled Effect Report, which is filled to the brim with updates made by previous posters, informing their fellow widow wannabes about their husband's health scares and near misses, and thanking the Grim Reaper for slowly but surely working his magic. But in amongst all of the reports of gout and high blood pressure, I found a few posts that really stand out. Thank you all for your support. I left my note at the end of the year. Thanks to you, I've become a widow. I received a lot of condolences. I'm sorry, your husband was still so young, etc. I never say it out loud, but he got what he deserved, so I've come here to express my sincere gratitude. It's been a few months since I left my death note, and I can't believe it, but my husband really died. The cause of death was heart failure, caused by sleep apnea syndrome. He was cold in the morning. I called an ambulance, and they confirmed his death at the hospital. To be honest, I'm so happy. So happy. So happy. Thank you so much, Grim Reaper. I was overwhelmed with joy when my husband, who I had just spoken ill of in this death note, was in a traffic accident the next day. I've been lurking on this site for a long time, but I refrained from posting because I thought mine was a mild case. A while ago, there was a show about Danashine on TV, and I watched it with my husband. Recently, Yahoo News featured an article about the administrator, Makita-san, and my husband said a lot of bad things about him. The next day, my husband went to work in his car and was hit by a truck and taken to a hospital. A terrible accident, they said. He broke his left leg, broke his pelvis, and ruptured some internal organs. He's in a critical condition and hasn't regained consciousness. I'm writing this from the hospital toilet. It's a strange feeling. I thought it would be painful, but I'm happy. What is this happiness? As time passes, my happiness and expectations are overflowing more and more. I hated my husband. He was just trying to act like a good person on the surface, but was filled with hatred himself. I thought by leaving my death note, my husband, or caretaker as he'd say, would somehow find out and become angry. I figured it's the same as saying something bad about the gods at a shrine. Of course, I'd be punished. But I'm so happy. Let me say more and more, I'm so happy. So happy. So much fun. Just die. Stay like this. Please. I can't show my smiling face in front of my parents-in-law, so I'll laugh a lot now, here. I'm smiling in this bathroom like I've never done before. I'm a weird person, sure. Other people will definitely think I'm weird if they see me. But I'm so happy. I can't stop smiling. Laughing even. I can't stop laughing as I write this. I can't write enough. Thank you, Grim Reaper. My husband is in a serious condition and won't last long, so I will let you all know when he dies. Just thank you so much. On any other forum, well, almost any other forum, such posts would be met with outright hostility. But on Danashine, 100% of the replies I've read have been supportive. Here's just a small taste of the responses to that last post I read. I'm jealous. My husband was also involved in a traffic accident, and I hope we receive a death notice tomorrow. What great fortune. I wish it were my husband instead of my pet who died today. Even though it's Christmas Eve, he yelled at me in front of our child and left the house. And when he came back, he forced me to obey him. When my husband's around, I want to kill my child, and then myself, just to hurt him. Oh, it's the same for me. When my husband's a jerk, I think about taking the kids and killing them. Seriously, I hope he dies soon. Last year, when I told mine I was going to the company's year-end party on the 29th, he complained a lot about how it was impossible at that time of year. But then today, on the 30th, he took the trouble to go out drinking with his friends, driving 90 minutes on his motorcycle. I prayed that he'd get crushed in an accident, but he called me to say that he had arrived safely. It's just unfortunate, really. I wonder if a truck will crash into my husband's car. I don't care if it's completely mangled or flattened, though I'd rather he did die in agony. That damn Otaku gaming idiot.
I stand ready.
Perhaps the darkest area of the website is the secret revenge tab, where users, who aren't content with just waiting for their prayers to come true, share their tips and tricks for expediting their husband's demise. I'll continue to cook your meals every day that are a little higher in sugar and salt, so I hope you pass away as soon as possible. I'll be there for you until the end. When you can no longer speak, I'll hold your hand and whisper in your ear, I hated you so much. Whether you're taken by accident or illness, please make sure you listen to my voice in your final moments. My husband has dyslipidemia. Even though he's taking medicine, he likes greasy foods, and his numbers are not going down. This was my light bulb moment. Now, I frequently pour oil on top of my husband's side dishes. The other day, when I made him Tianjin rice, I poured some sesame oil on the rice, put an egg on top of it, poured oil on that, poured sauce on it, and no matter how you look at it, it was greasy and inedible. But he ate it, saying, "It's delicious, it's delicious." He thinks he has a sophisticated palate, the idiot. It's a very modest attack, and will probably take a long time, but he's had hepatitis and a fatty liver, so I hope he gets diabetes, liver cancer, or some other disease that insurance will cover. You bald mama's boy. I used to put dirty dishwater in your eye drops, but starting today, I'm changing it to dirty toilet water. Toilet water with turds in before they're flushed. I'm gonna step up my revenge and send you to hell. Okay, I think that's enough examples, damn. So after all that, you may be wondering what type of person sets up a website like Danashine. And if you assumed it was another disgruntled housewife, you'd actually be wrong. The site's administrator is actually a man called Koichiro Makita. He's not shy about sharing his name or contact info either, and as one of those posts referenced, he's even appeared numerous times on Japanese TV to discuss his creation. On the site itself, he goes into detail about his reasons for making Danashine, stating that growing up with toxic parents left him with nothing but bad memories and a damaged psyche, and that if someone's making you feel bad, there's nothing morally wrong with wishing them obliterated. But at the bottom of his explanation, Makita links to a resource for anyone looking to take matters into their own hands.
So be it.
I wrote about how to kill your husband. Do not misuse. The police won't find out. How to kill your husband quietly and discreetly. How to damage your husband. Kill the people who piss you off. Happiness awaits once you have done so. This article, created by Makita himself, outlines how to, quote, slowly and casually kill your husband, using various legal chemicals that won't show up on a medical exam. For obvious reasons, I won't be displaying it here. Though he's since claimed that he regrets writing this article, and now urges people not to actively follow through with their plans, Makita nonetheless still hosts these instructions on his website. As far as I can tell, he hasn't faced any legal repercussions for encouraging others to slay their partners and spreading awareness on how to covertly go about it. To date, there have been over 223,000 notes made on Danashine, each one a twisted wish. The site is still extremely active and receives dozens, sometimes hundreds of new submissions each day. And though it's easy to write most of them off as a dark fantasy or harmless venting, looking at that monthly tally on the homepage, you have to wonder how many of these users have stopped wishing and started planning. Hey guys, Lizzie here, and thank you very much for listening. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters: Dalton Smith, George Lopez, Holly Lyons, Zach Horgan, Adelstade Tristerson, Alana Pons, Alicia 1996V, Asia Mina, Azrael Warakai, Colin Monsma, Connor Lothan, Farewell Tattoos Jack Seville, Gina Valera, Grace Archie, Hamish, Ian Billock, Itai Allen, LJB, Misty Blue Longy, Peter Oldrach, Pray to Jesus, TNS Mum, Terry Ford, and Yokai. Thank you guys so much for your continued support.
I expected as much.
Yes? Coming back here seems so
Xiao Mao, or Little Kitty in English, was a Chinese influencer and live streamer with a sizable following. For years, she had uploaded fashion and beauty-themed content to her 670,000 loyal fans on Douyin, TikTok's sister app. Young, attractive, and successful, Little Kitty appeared to be living the type of existence most folks can only dream of. And with every post, she only seemed to become more and more popular, with netizens drawn in by her natural charisma and charm. She was only 25 years old, but she was already a social media expert, said one of Little Kitty's closest friends. She was kind and very funny in everything she did, both online and off. But like most influencers, Little Kitty only let her adoring public see the highlight reel of her life. In the offline world, Little Kitty was Laura Malcher, a young woman who struggled with depression. The bubbly and smiley Little Kitty that everyone knew and loved was little more than a persona that Malcher had created, a mask she wore to conceal her troubled reality. And that cheerful mask would occasionally slip too, with some fans noticing the worrying marks that lined her wrists in certain photos. Even though Kitty had found some happiness through vlogging and streaming, she always seemed to fall back into the blues. That is, until 2019, when she began dating Zhao Ruolin, a basketball enthusiast with a small following on Douyin, whom she had fallen head over heels for. Ruolin had a fanbase, sure, but it was many times smaller than Kitty's, though of course that never even crossed her mind. Kitty had finally found someone who could reignite the spark inside of her, and that was more than enough. During their relationship, Kitty mentored Ruolin and encouraged him to post more frequently to his Douyin page. She taught him how to create more engaging content, how to get more impressions, and how to better spread his name online. All the while, she continuously promoted his page, sang his praises, and collaborated with him on videos. Over time, Ruolin's online presence grew, until he reached a follower count of over 2 million people, eclipsing even Little Kitty's following. It was around the time that he reached that milestone, in March 2021, that Ruolin took to his social media pages and dropped some staggering bombshells. He revealed to his entire audience that his now ex-girlfriend, Little Kitty, was an unstable wreck. That throughout their relationship, she had manipulated him, threatening to leap from rooftops whenever she didn't get her way. That she would often big scars on her wrists using makeup for attention and sympathy. That she had cheated on him several times with rich men that she had met online. And, worst of all, that Little Kitty was pregnant, and he feared the child wasn't his. And rather than handle all of this privately, he decided to announce this to the world, telling all of his fans that he couldn't take it anymore, and that he wanted nothing more to do with Little Kitty. As you can imagine, Kitty's social media pages were flooded with negative comments, lambasting her and saying that she should leap from a rooftop and rid the world of her presence. But as we all know, there's more than one side to every story, and now feeling pressured to tell hers, Kitty took to her socials and made public what she had desperately wanted to keep private. According to Kitty, Ruolin had cheated on her numerous times once he started to gain a following, oftentimes directly messaging his fans and inviting them to hook up. Screenshots of some of those conversations have since become public, released by the very targets he tried to seduce. Kitty also showed off close-ups of her scars, which were obviously real, and provided medical records that prove she was receiving treatment for clinical depression. She stated that she had never been unfaithful to Ruo Lin, that the child most certainly was his, and that she had even asked him to take a paternity test before the birth. Ruo Lin had refused to do so. As a result, Kitty terminated the pregnancy. Ultimately, although her feelings for Ruo Lin had always been 100% authentic, she felt that he had simply used her to grow his online presence. Several of little Kitty's real-world friends spoke out in her defense. None spoke up for Ruo Lin. Although we may never know for certain which side of this argument was being more truthful, it's worth noting that Kitty was the only one to provide evidence backing up her version of events. She also dealt with the situation with more grace, keeping her posts respectfully worded, and only revealing what was necessary to defend herself from Ruo Lin's accusations. This whole ordeal had a powerful impact on Kitty's state of mind. It didn't help that Ruo Lin's fanbase continuously tuned into her live streams just to leave vulgar comments about her appearance and personality, calling her every name under the sun. A few months passed, and eventually, Kitty moved on and found herself in a relationship with another man named Lee. Unfortunately, this one was destined to end even more disastrously. Lee would use Kitty's bank account as his own personal piggy bank, and even scammed her into buying a house in his name. But that wasn't the worst of it. Though unconfirmed, little Kitty's friends claimed that in October of 2021, she and Lee were spending some time alone together. At some point, Lee slipped something into Kitty's water, waited for her to fall asleep, and invited his friends over. The group then proceeded to rape her. Kitty's friends urged her to report the incident to the authorities, but she refused. Regardless, Lee disappeared of his own accord and cut all communication with Kitty. Shortly thereafter, on October 14th, 2021, little Kitty began a live stream. Some say looking for support from her fans. Some say as an indirect way to grab the attention of either Ruo Lin or Lee. Whatever her motivation, those tuned in noticed that something was off with Kitty. She appeared completely burnt out and exhausted, and rather than being her upbeat, happy self, she instead addressed her audience in a quiet, sullen voice. This will likely be my last video. In my content, I appear happy, but that's all for show. As many of you know, I've been dealing with a lot of stuff recently, and to be honest, I can't take it anymore. The stream continued on, with Kitty half-heartedly interacting with the chat. That is, until she let out an exasperated sigh and muttered, "He's still not here yet." It was at that point that Kitty brought an object into frame, a clear plastic bottle filled with a dark brown liquid. She told her viewers it was filled with a pesticide and that she was going to drink it. At this point, thousands of people were tuned into the stream, and whilst many begged for her to reconsider and get some rest, it's always the negative voices that stand out. And this being the internet, hundreds of people were egging her on, telling her to chug down the liquid and get it over with quickly. "Just go ahead and do it," wrote one viewer. "Stop wasting everyone's time." Some of them may have thought they were being funny. Others perhaps thought that little Kitty was joking and that the bottle was full of cola. Ruo Lin's fans may have meant what they typed. Kitty read some of those negative comments aloud. They were nothing new. She'd received countless hurtful messages in recent months. But that evening, they didn't fuel her sadness. They fueled her resolve. Appearing the happiest she had all stream, little Kitty raised her bottle, almost as if toasting her viewers, and thanked them all for watching, before calmly drinking down the liquid in one go. She held up the near-empty bottle, showed off the last few drips inside, and proclaimed, "Wow, that tasted awful." Shortly thereafter, Kitty's calm demeanor melted away. "Haha, you really did it," wrote one viewer. "Good for you," wrote another. Still on stream, Kitty began drinking glass after glass of water, before clutching at her throat and gasping heavily. The live stream then abruptly ended. Many assumed that the stream had just been a stunt, but the following day, they found out that little Kitty wasn't bluffing. Media publications announced that she had passed away after ingesting diluted pesticide. After ending the stream the night prior, Kitty had immediately called 120, China's medical emergency number. She explained her situation, and an ambulance quickly arrived at her home in Shandong. But it was too late. Her insides had already been damaged beyond repair, and she passed while receiving treatment at a local hospital. She was then transported to a funeral home in Jining City. Her family arrived, and she was cremated. Which brings us to ghost marriages, or yin marriages as they're known in the Middle Kingdom. A practice which involves both a bride and a groom, neither of them alive. During a yin marriage, the remains of both the soon-to-be husband and wife, whom, more often than not, were strangers in life, are brought together to be married in a formal ceremony, during which their bodies are buried together. This ceremony is performed for several reasons. Firstly, because superstitious families believe that anyone who passes without a partner is doomed to spend the afterlife alone, and that this can bring bad luck to their still living relatives. And secondly, because families with more traditional values consider it shameful to have an unwed daughter. And thirdly, because some families wish to adhere to certain cultural norms, such as how a younger brother shouldn't marry before their elder brother. So if Big Brother should pass unexpectedly before he could wed, a yin marriage could solve that issue. It's important to note that yin marriages have been outlawed in China, and I want to stress that the practice is condemned by the vast majority of the population, and not just because neither of the deceased can agree to the wedding. Unfortunately, it's far from unheard of for a family to sell the body of their daughter to be married to another family's dead son. And given China's population imbalance due to their former one-child policy, it is almost exclusively women being sold, often for large sums of money. This is particularly common in Shandong, where there's a thriving black market for female corpses. It's a bigger business than most people realize too, with the average sale price being somewhere between 50,000 to 70,000 yuan, about $7,000 to $10,000. It's so profitable, in fact, that certain entrepreneurs will go around cemeteries and dig up product to sell. As a result, some wealthy families choose to bury their loved ones in concrete coffins fitted with CCTV cameras. That way, they can make sure that their daughter is still resting in peace. Though rare, there have been documented cases of gangs murdering women specifically to sell them as ghost brides. After all, the fresher the bride, the higher the price tag. And in the minds of the most depraved businessmen, it's smarter to just create their own inventory. There are even names for the 3 tiers of brides that can be purchased from such salespeople. The top tier are called fresh ones. Negotiations for a fresh one can begin mere minutes after the bride has passed, or in some cases, while she's still alive, fighting for her life. Then there are wet bodies, those between a few weeks and a few months old. The lowest quality brides are known as dried meat. Unfortunately, when it comes to yin marriages, even human ashes aren't off limits. And being young, beautiful, and unmarried at the time of her end, little Kitty's could be sold for a hefty sum, especially considering her fresh status. Her parents would never agree to such a sale though. They were modern, well-educated people, not the type of superstitious folk who would subscribe to such a practice. And so, while her loved ones waited outside the crematorium, 3 staff members at her funeral home, surnamed Xiao, Shang, and Lei, secretly filled an urn with powder and stole little Kitty's real ashes. Safe to say, this wasn't their first rodeo. They soon found a buyer for Kitty's remains, but the $11,000 deal fell through when their prospective client backed out at the last minute. Following this, they contacted a second potential customer, who not only backed out, but ended up reporting the trio to the authorities. When apprehended, the wife of one of the men reportedly said to an officer, "What's the problem? It's not a big deal." Thankfully, little Kitty's ashes have since been returned to her family in Hunan. The story of little Kitty has since sparked a wave of debate across the Chinese-speaking internet, with many discussing whether those who egged her on to drink the pesticide should face legal repercussions. Kitty's parents tried to take action against one user in particular, who left an inordinate amount of cruel messages. A user with the screen name, "You're the most precious." His basketball profile picture suggests that he was a fan of Ruo Lin's. However, other than Douyin deleting his account, their case against the user didn't go anywhere. As for the 3 men who tried to sell Kitty's remains, I can't find any information about their sentencing online, at least not in English. I hope they paid for their actions. I hope we can all learn to be a bit more kind to each other in both the offline world and the online. And I hope little Kitty can finally rest in peace. She deserves that much at least.
I'll help however I can.
This topic includes images that may disturb some viewers. If you'd like to skip to the next entry, you can do so using the timestamps on the progress bar. Released in 2004 to both critical and commercial success, Half-Life 2 is still considered one of the most influential and groundbreaking games of all time.
Yes?
Developed and published by the legendary Valve Corporation, this second installment in the Half-Life series was originally intended to have a much darker, grittier, and overall more somber tone. Traces of that can still be found in the end product, especially in areas like Ravenhall. But perhaps one of the creepiest things you can encounter in the game is this. Corpse01.mdl. If you're familiar with Source Engine games, you'll most certainly have met this fellow at some point. With regards to Half-Life 2, you'll find many of these models strewn unceremoniously throughout the campaign. They're generally used as props for some eerie environmental storytelling. The fallen humans that you pass on your journey, who've met with a variety of terrible fates, positioned in ways that let the player fill in the blanks with their imagination. But far more disturbing than any NPC's hypothetical backstory is the disturbing reality of this model itself. Despite Half-Life 2 having cutting-edge graphics for the time it was released, something about this model's face always seemed to be a bit too realistic. And while browsing through the r/creepygaming subreddit, I came across this SpongeBob meme, which hinted that the texture may have an extremely dark origin, one that most people didn't know about. And after doing a little digging, I found out that was true. Corpse01's facial texture had been taken from a real-life photo, a close-up shot of a man's body, one whose face had been completely burnt off. For obvious reasons, I can't show that photo here on YouTube. It's pretty much identical to the in-game model's facial texture, the only difference being that in the real photo, the man still has one of his eyes mostly intact. For the in-game texture, an artist simply duplicated the man's empty eye socket. Perhaps they thought keeping a natural lifeless eye in the game was a step too far. From what I can find online, the photo was taken from a medical textbook used to teach students about burns. The images used in such textbooks are sourced from all over the place. This has led many people to speculate about who this man was in life and how he came to meet such a terrible fate. Strangely, despite the man's face being completely burned off, his neck, chest, and even hair remain undamaged. It's hard to think up an explanation for how this man, whoever he was, could have sustained such a wound accidentally. It almost feels like the burning has to have been done to him intentionally, and I've seen many people repeating the same explanation online. That he was the victim of a mafia killing, and that they used a blowtorch to melt his face off and make an example of him. That would explain why his hair is intact. But even though that story keeps getting repeated as if it were fact, there's absolutely no evidence that this man met with foul play, other than the strange condition of his body. Personally, I think there's a more innocent explanation. Yeah, innocent is the right word to use. Many people donate their remains to science, and many of those are used to teach med students. I think it's far more likely that a medical practitioner took one of those cadavers and torched the facial area specifically as a teaching example. At least, I hope that's the case. Since the photo's online fingerprint can only be traced back to 2011, that means that some employee at Valve must have scanned a copy of a textbook and imported the texture into the game, possibly without asking permission from the book's publisher, and definitely without asking permission from the deceased or his relatives. Half-Life 2 had a notoriously rushed development cycle, so this may have been done as a time-saving measure. But even if all the right boxes had been ticked, and the image was a royalty-free stock photo, Valve still didn't tell any of their player base about the texture's origin, leaving them to interact with a real body in Half-Life 2, roleplay as him in Gary's mod, and use him in fan projects, most of them ignorant about the texture's less than wholesome backstory. That being said, I suppose it's possible that nobody at Valve even realized the disturbing origin of the texture themselves. That's to say, it may have come in a third-party asset library without its origin being explicitly noted. Off the top of my head, I can't think of many games that feature real photos of dead people. Hong Kong 97, Batman the Enemy Within, but many others have used morbid references for their models. For instance, several of Bioshock's splicer enemies were based on World War I soldiers who underwent pioneering facial surgeries. Mortal Kombat 11 developers looked at obliterated bodies to design their infamous fatalities, leaving one staff member needing therapy. And as for Valve themselves, their development team on Left 4 Dead 2 would create a nightmare folder full of stomach-churning real images, but found this type of research to be so gratuitous and unnecessary that they didn't make use of any of them in-game, instead basing their zombie designs on things like housing insulation and potato skins. So it seems Valve did learn their lesson in the end, and you can be sure that if Half-Life 3 ever does get announced, this texture will almost certainly not be making a reappearance. Unfortunately, this isn't the only texture in Half-Life 2 based on a real person with a sad backstory. Though not directly ripped from real-life photos, many of the human characters in-game are modelled on actual people, mostly actors, Valve employees and their families, all of whom are credited in-game. All of them, that is, except for the facial reference for Eli Barnes. While searching for inspiration for the character's face, Valve's graphic designer, Randy Linden, passed a homeless man holding a sign saying he was looking for work. Since the man had a, quote, interesting appearance, Randy asked him to come back to the studio and have his face scanned into the game in return for a few bucks. The developers never even took note of the man's name, and he was never credited in any of the games he appeared in. Despite being immortalized in one of the most legendary games of all time, we still don't know who this man is. It makes you wonder whether he's even aware of how well known his face has become. Whoever he is, I hope he's still out there somewhere, and doing okay. r/confessions, a subreddit where people use throwaway accounts to share their deepest and darkest secrets. Though more often than not, the posts either revolve around personal dramas or cheating spouses. But every so often, you'll stumble upon a truly dark revelation. Like this post, made by an anonymous user 10 months ago. I know the person who possibly committed an unsolved double murder. So I'll start by saying this. I'm not entirely sure that this is true, so take it with a grain of salt. My neighbour of 2 years is a retired Delta Force officer. He's been through some shit in terms of war and its ramifications as far as PTS and paranoia goes. He can barely walk, and I work at a grocery store down the street. I do little jobs for him, bring him things from the store, and stuff like that. One day, after I come back from the store, he starts talking to me about where he's from. Basically, he was adopted by these two rich folks and moved into their house with another foster child, whom he still calls his stepbrother.
How can I help?
This town he lived in and grew up in was your basic industry town and didn't have much to offer. Therefore, like most small-town people, he resorted to drinking and doing drugs. Well, he tells me that when he was a freshman or sophomore in high school, he was dating this one girl that he really liked. I'm not going to give her name for reasons that'll soon become obvious, but she went to his school and was quite pretty and popular. In his words, she was the only girl I ever wanted to be with in high school, and I finally got my chance. One day, after they'd had an evening of fun, she left to go back home. But this was a lie that she told him, so she could meet up with another guy at the park. Me and my friends happened to go to that park too, he told me, and we see her with this popular guy that I hated. I went up to the car, shot her in the head with my .22, and shot him in the chest so he wouldn't die quickly, so he could sit there and bleed out while I mocked him. I defensively sat there and went along with all of this BS. But then he brought out the evidence, items which he had grabbed from the car that night before he and his friends took off. Now, mind you, I thought this was absolute bull. He's a very straightforward guy, and I believe he's an honest guy too. I guess because he really has nothing to lose, considering he's dying of 3 types of cancer. But he's never talked like that to me so intimately, especially about something so real and crazy. Fast forward 2 weeks. I was watching one of those unsolved crime documentaries on YouTube, curious if anything he said rang true. I have to say though, everything lined up to a T. It only got worse when this popular documentary, viewed by hundreds of thousands of people, told me the exact evidence taken from the car. All the same items I had recently been shown by my neighbor. I don't know what to do with this information. Every documentary I've watched on the incident shows me the evidence my neighbor took from the car. The things he's kept in his house all these years. This happened many decades ago, and I truly don't know what to think of it. Why did he tell me all this? Why would he make it up? Why would he have all of those missing pieces of evidence that dozens of documentaries say are missing? My only thought at this point is for some reason he's obsessed with this case and constructed all of the evidence to make it look real. But honestly, I believe he did it. I think he genuinely told me the truth, because at this point, he has nothing to lose. How do I deal with this? Going to the police won't do anything, and he's always been good to me, paid me a lot of money, and helped me out of bad situations. I'm not going to believe I'm a bad person for holding on to this knowledge, but I genuinely want some feedback on what or how to feel in this kind of situation, when I very well may be the only person holding on to the information that 2 innocent families have been searching for years. Please don't judge. I just feel weird about hearing this from him. It all lines up so well, but he's always been great to me. And like I said, maybe it's not true, but there are just too many coincidences. Unsurprisingly, the comment section was inundated with questions about the case. What were the names of the victims? Where exactly had the incident taken place? And what was the evidence that the old man was keeping? Since the original poster, OP, was remaining tight-lipped, the good people of Reddit began conducting their own investigation to figure out the full story, and, if true, to bring this old man to justice. If the OP wasn't going to act on the confession, they were. After all, this certainly wouldn't have been the first time that someone had made a dark confession on Reddit that turned out to be true. Perhaps thinking that he shouldn't have opened up this can of worms, OP went on to delete the entire thread, likely in an effort to sweep his neighbor's past under the rug and stop this search effort. An effort which he certainly hadn't anticipated. Still, that didn't stop the most determined web sleuths from carrying on with their detective work. And soon, it became apparent which unsolved case OP's neighbor had been involved in. User PReal420 made a separate post on RBI. Today I stumbled upon a post on r/confessions. The OP had a throwaway, and the post was just deleted less than 15 minutes ago. OP asked if he should turn in his neighbor, who had confessed to a double murder. Upon researching the little bits of information he gave, I discovered he was talking about the Westside Park murders that happened in Muncie, Indiana in 1985. I guess I'm asking if that post can be retrieved and traced back to its source. This seems very legit, but could be an elaborate troll. Either way, I believe it's something that should at least be looked into. The Westside Park slayings. In September of 1985, Kimberly Dowell and Ethan Dixon were both slain in Muncie, Indiana, in the exact same fashion described by OP in his post. They were both found lifeless inside Ethan's Volkswagen Rabbit hatchback, with the engine still running. Several items had reportedly been taken from the scene. Witnesses reported seeing 3 individuals leaving the park at around the time of the incident, and this sketch of a possible suspect was released to the public. Despite a thorough investigation though, the case unfortunately went cold. Other Reddit users began to comment under PReal's post, stating that they had contacted law enforcement in Muncie and brought the confession to their attention. PReal himself even contacted the FBI. Unfortunately, they still haven't heard back from them. As such, the authenticity of OOP's post remains uncertain. Given the vagueness of the original post, it is completely possible that this was all just a tasteless hoax. But it's also completely possible that said vagueness was strategic, and that this was a genuine confession. After all, the real perp has to have been someone's neighbor. why not obese? Until we hear back from law enforcement, or some new developments arise, all we can do is wait for an update online and speculate. Hi guys, Lazy here. Well, I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas, however and wherever you spent it. A huge thank you to my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon. George Lopez, Holly Lyons, Modest Bulbasaur, Smilin' Jack, Alana Pons, Asia Mina, Azrael Warakai, Chief Kochuake, Colin Monsma, Connor Lothan, Sai Wazao, Farewell Tattoos Jack Seville, Gina Valera, Hamish, Ian Billock, Infamous Sempapi, Jordan Bree, Monica Mendoza, Peter Logdredge, TNS Mum, Ellen Doloff, Itai Alon, Nephis 1988, and Lydia Kuma. Thank you so much for your continued support. Until the next video, I'd like to wish you all a happy new year. Stay safe, stay spooky, and remember, the devil's in the detail.